They can't both win, but two parties in the most recent German elections have won in very different ways. And the results show you how this is possible. First, there's the center-right Christian Democratic Union and the Christian Social Union. Together, they're just called the Union. They won the most votes, but right behind, the Alternative for Germany party, they represent the far right with just over 20% of the vote. This is important because it's their best showing ever and more than double what they got in the last election. But here's what's strange. The party that lost the most ground, who voters effectively sought to kick out of government, the left-leaning Social Democratic Party, the SPD, it's very possible they'll stay in power. And the centrist Free Democratic Party, which was also part of the German government the last 4 years, they finished so far behind, they won't even have a single seat. How does all of this make sense? Well, it all comes down to how Germany's parliament works and how their politics have become more fragmented than ever. There are 630 seats in German parliament. You need half plus one, or 316 seats to form a majority. But based on the latest provisional count, no party comes anywhere close to meeting this bar. This is pretty standard in German politics. You almost never see a single party winning more than half the seats. So you can only rule by working together with other parties. And the months-long process of coalition building always starts with math. What combinations of party results get you across that 316 majority threshold? And coalitions are such a primary feature of German government that so many permutations have their own colorful names based on the color of the parties involved. So if I sweep that away, this combination, this coalition is called the Jamaica, black, yellow, green. If we swap out this one, this is called the Kenya. Again, they're national colors. Swapping this one out, this gives us the Germany, appropriately enough. If we swap the middle one out, this gives us the Bahamas. There's one named after a fruit. This is the blackberry. And the most recent experiment, which is called the traffic light, red, green, yellow. This is a center-left coalition that has ruled Germany the last 4 years, but which broke down after months of infighting.
Und was in Deutschland passiert ist die letzten 3 Jahre mit der Ampelregierung war eine Katastrophe.
Now, you remember these guys, right? The SPD. They're the ones who lost the most ground in these most recent elections, punted down to 3rd place. But the reason they may still find a place in government is because of what's called the Grand Coalition, a tried and tested combination when the two big centrist parties team up.
And it's called a Grand Coalition because it was between the big kind of main center-left and center-right parties, which had been the biggest political forces in Germany for decades after the Second World War. They do both see themselves as parties that have, regularly take responsibility for government in Germany. And this is really the main thing that they have in common.
This is what government under Angela Merkel looked like for 12 out of the 16 years she was chancellor. And the SPD is seen as having the best shot at becoming a coalition partner with the CDU's Friedrich Merz, who, as the leader of the party with the most seats, is set to become Chancellor of Germany.
They do have in common the support for Ukraine, even if the Conservatives take a stronger stance on that. They also have in common support for the European Union. So on foreign policy, they're actually not too far away from each other.
But coalition talks in Germany tend to take time. The center-right merging with the center-left is like an arranged marriage at best. And while they may agree on things like tax cuts, they may disagree on what social programs need to be cut to pay for them, for example. A couple of months to iron all of this out is considered pretty fast. And Merz has set a goal of Easter to have a clear plan of which party his will team up with.
It's not going to have a big majority within the parliament, so it's going to be kind of a challenge to keep this coalition together, but the pressure is so high from outside that I would expect this coalition to be rather stable.
But let's talk about the AfD. The party of Alice Weidel came in second, and yet it will be virtually impossible for her to play any role in any coalition this time around, because every other mainstream political party has effectively blocked hers. The leader of the AfD says her far-right party has never been stronger.
Wir haben ein historisches Ergebnis eingefahren. Wir waren noch nie stärker im Bund.
The best result for the hard right here since the defeat of the Nazis in the Second World War.
But there is a long-standing unwritten rule that the CDU-CSU Union, the SPD, the Greens, and the FDP have all bought into, which is called the Brandmauer.
So the concept of the firewall here in Germany, called the Brandmauer in German, is that the centrist parties feel that the AfD, the far-right populist party that's made such gains in this election, is simply too extreme in some of its components, but also in some of its underlying ideas.
So most of the centrist parties have said, because of Germany's history, they don't believe that bringing a right-wing radical party into government can tame this party.
The AfD has long suffered from this reputation of associating too closely, maybe even embracing Germany's Nazi past. Last year, senior members of the party were accused of attending a meeting of right-wing extremists the year before, centered on this idea of remigration, which is a mass deportation of foreign-born Germans, even those who have German citizenship.
Here in Germany, protesters have taken to the streets to oppose the country's popular far-right party.
Just under a year ago, one of the founders of the AfD was convicted for saying "everything for Germany" in a campaign speech. In German, that's a banned Nazi slogan.
Björn Höcke, the co-leader of the far-right Alternative for Germany party, has been fined €13,000.
And within the last few months, the party has had to eject several of its members, arrested and accused of trying to overthrow the federal government. But the AfD just had its strongest election showing ever.
We can't talk about this election without talking about the far right, which has really surged in recent years.
The second strongest party in the German parliament.
Among voters under 30, top party was the AfD.
The party's leader has worked to distance herself from the more radical wings of the AfD, trying to clean up the party's image.
And she's sometimes seen as having been a modernizing face of the party, as somebody who can broaden the appeal. The fact that she's gay, her partner is of Sri Lankan origin. They don't even live in Germany. They live in Switzerland, but have a residence in Germany as well. All of that sort of indicates what sounds like a sort of, what the far right would usually call globalist and progressive kind of lifestyle. But there she is leading this party.
And the AfD also has a very different take on big issues. From their own party platform, there's a plan to dismantle the European Union and replace it with a looser federation of European nations, also to abandon the Eurozone, reintroducing the Deutschmark. This at a time when Germany's struggling economy is top of mind for many voters. The world's third largest economy, behind only the US and China, posted back-to-back contractions in GDP for the first time since the early 2000s.
It is one of the reasons why the AfD says that it's the only party that has enough economic competence to rule Germany in the future. We also see that young voters who vote for the first time have either chosen the AfD or have chosen the left wing, so are going to rather the extreme sides of the political spectrum.
And for a party that has been on a long quest for legitimacy, they've found it, not just in these most recent election results, but also from overseas.
Elend, can you see the audience?
Yes, I can see the audience.
Let me.
Last month, Elon Musk made a live video appearance at an AfD rally, telling thousands of AfD supporters the future of civilization hung in the balance and that they need not be so eternally ashamed of the country's Nazi past.
I think there's frankly too much of a focus on past guilt, and we need to move beyond that. It's good to be proud of German culture, German values, and not to lose that in some sort of multiculturalism that dilutes everything.
And recently, at a security conference in Munich, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance skewered world leaders, accusing them of censoring free speech and appearing to call out the Brandmauer explicitly.
Democracy rests on the sacred principle that the voice of the people matters. There's no room for firewalls. You either uphold the principle or you don't.
And we would find out just hours after that speech in Munich, J.D. Vance had decided not to meet with Germany's left-leaning leader, Olaf Scholz, preferring instead to meet with the head of the far-right AfD, Alice Weidel. So it's true what she said about her party. It has never been stronger. And it's been a while since we've seen German politics this divided.
If this government is not able to address the issues which are at stake and which are mobilizing people to go and vote for the AfD, which is especially the migration issue, then we will see a further rise of this party.
The thing that sometimes gets lost in all the talk about the rise of the right-wing AfD is that the far left also saw a big boost. Consider how each of the major parties did this year compared to their performance in 2021. Die Linke, aka the left, in 2021, they only finished with 4.9% of the popular vote. This is the death blow in German politics because when you fall short of 5%, not only do you not get your proportional share of seats, you actually get 0 seats for not crossing that threshold. And during the campaign, the left, Die Linke, looked like it was on life support. But they surged towards the finish line, nearly doubling their vote results, which will now earn them more than 60 seats in parliament. And let's talk about the flip side, the 3 parties whose government coalition just collapsed, paving the way for these elections. Together, they lost almost 20% of the vote. The far right and far left picked up most of that.
How can a political landscape that is based on consensus, on coalition, work if the political extremes get stronger in the future? For German standards, we are certainly in a situation where we see more polarization than has been there in the past. And it's something that concerns a lot of Germans in opinion polls, especially if they look at the example of the United States today.
And the big winner of the night, the CDU-CSU union, this was their second worst showing ever. 20 years ago, centrist parties in Germany together got 90% of the vote. Now in 2025, it's more like 60%. And Friedrich Merz, the man set to become chancellor, he is facing an incredible challenge ahead.
There are at least 3 questions which have to be tackled by the new government. On the one hand, it's the migration issue, then it's the economic situation, and then finally we have to face a completely new world order, and we have to find a way to respond to this challenge which comes in the first line from the United States.
Yes, the Trump administration has forced not just Germany, but all of Europe to reconsider how much they can count on the US in trade, but also defense. And at the core of this question, a much more fundamental one about identity, as Germans increasingly differ sharply over exactly what it means to be German.